most concerning is really the gravity of these crimes. They're not just shoplifting from local convenience stores. Many of these cases, they do involve using firearms, grand theft, and when it comes to the violence portion of this, it's not just kids fighting kids. They are also firing back at authority as well. This was the scene just yesterday afternoon. Tacoma police say one of its detectives was working near South Hosmer and Steel Street when they were shot. Police later arrested 2 teenagers who were hiding under a deck in someone's backyard. The suspects' ages, 14 and 15 years old. A very grown-up crime involving children, a situation local law enforcement continues to see. About 2 weeks ago, we had another car full of kids shoot at a Tacoma police officer. I have no idea why they think that would even be fine to do that. But right now, the kids they're not scared of anything. They think they have nothing to live for, or that there's no consequences to their actions. And unfortunately, a lot of them are finding this out the hard way when it's too late. Sergeant Darren Moss with the Pierce County Sheriff's Department says because of the severity of these crimes, many of these young people will be charged as an adult instead of a juvenile. It's not a game. These kids, they're not going to be going home. There's no prize for what they're doing, Robbing a liquor store and getting $100, that doesn't set your family up for life. They're not winning the lotto or anything like that. All they're doing is causing mayhem in their own communities. Earlier this week, an 18-year-old and another adult shot and killed each other near a bus stop in Parkland. A verbal argument turns into both of you dying over absolutely nothing. And that's the kind of stuff we're seeing, and it's like, this is not okay. What is going on in these kids' minds that it's such impulsive behavior? Every incident involving young people begs the question as to why this keeps happening and why kids and teenagers are willing to put their futures on the line. School's out. It's always busier during the summer, but I don't see these crimes disappearing when we go back to school because the kids that are doing them probably aren't going to be going to school. Between parents, schools, and local authorities, Sergeant Moss says the responsibility falls on everyone in order to change the trajectory. It's everything. It's all hands on deck at this point. You can look to law enforcement, but nobody wants us in their home. You don't want me in your home disciplining your child, and that's not what we're here for. I did touch base with Tacoma police today. They say that the detective who was shot yesterday is still in the hospital. We don't know when they're going to get out yet. However, they are stable. Live in Tacoma, I'm Nikki Torres, Fox 13 News.
We begin this noon with breaking news. A 16-year-old is now under arrest for a murder in Troy. Police say it happened last month, and police arrested the suspect following a search warrant that was issued. The teenager has now been charged with the murder of Alexander Crawford. Troy police say the teen and Crawford got into a fight that led to a shooting in the area of 102nd Street and 2nd Avenue. Now, Crawford was taken to the hospital as a result of his injuries, where he later died. Troy police say detectives have been investigating since July 2nd, interviewing witnesses and developing the necessary cause for arrest. Anybody with any information?
32nd Eastern, full bailing, get us canine. Get us canine started. Stay with driver.
And this, bad crash, start medical, roll over.
Brazen bandits wreaking chaos on West Michigan roads and businesses.
Just as disturbing as the crime sprees are the young faces behind them. Target 8 investigator Susan Samples tells us Kent County's prosecutor says the juvenile system is in crisis, struggling to handle all these cases. Susan?
Kent County's prosecutor charged around 1,800 juvenile cases last year. That's up 600 from the year before, a 51% increase.
Yep, keep your hands up. Oh, they just hit a curb here.
And this,
If you're stunned by the lawlessness, you have lots of company.
We're well aware of it.
An attempted carjacking by an 11-year-old.
32nd Eastern.
In this stolen car chase, 3 13-year-olds.
And this, bad crash, start medical.
The suspects in this one, 14, 15, and 18.
It's not every kid. There's probably a core that are doing a lot of these offenses and picking up a lot of these offenses.
Consider the case of now 21-year-old Jerome Cross Jr., who's racked up 15 mugshots as an adult for felony car theft, breaking and entering, weapons, drugs, and recently conducting a criminal enterprise. New state law prohibits us from accessing Cross's juvenile record, but his own words as an adult hint at a long one. In this letter to a judge, Cross, pleading for leniency in 2021, apologized for the, quote, faulty thinking error he had been having throughout life and for giving up over and over due to the fact that he was always abandoned and put down growing up.
When was he not loved? When was he abandoned?
We took Cross's letter to his family, who made clear while Cross grew up amid crime and his parents went to jail themselves when he was little, the entire family did everything it could to love him and raise him right.
Talking to him, I'm blue in the face, constantly showing him, you gotta get a job. You have to obtain your GED.
I wish I had the answer. You know, I think it's a combination of things.
Kent County Prosecutor Chris Becker believes causes of the juvenile crime wave are just as complex as any solution. Isolation and boredom during COVID, easier access to marijuana, little hope for a better future, social media.
They're doing it for likes, they're doing it for the show, they're doing it for the thrill.
Becker said state law requires juveniles be held in the least restrictive setting in most cases, and there's a critical shortage of juvenile beds anyway. In the recent case of an 18-year-old suspect, the detention center, writing of serious and dangerous overcrowding, asked the jail to house the teen instead.
It's a crisis right now.
Becker is seeking solutions, partnering with Pastor Daryl Gaddy at Pilgrim Rest Baptist Church.
These are our children. They're us.
Gaddy, working with Becker and the Grand Rapids Police, is developing a community-based juvenile treatment program that will include vocational training.
We encourage the heart, we empower the mind, but we must engage the hands. And so that is how we build the lives of these young people who so many of them they've just been given up on. We want to capture them and win them back.
If you want to help with the effort to develop that new program, you will find Pastor Gaddy's contact info inside this story when it's posted later this evening at woodtv.com.
Are still being put into prolonged solitary confinement or directed segregation every year, despite the UN calling it a form of psychological torture. One prisoner who experienced this says he suffered physical and emotional trauma. Jessica Swan has more.
Tupe Messina was jailed for 5.5 years for aggravated robbery. During this time, he says he spent long stretches in a cell by himself, including one period of 74 days in a row.
The impact would have been the trauma of being isolated and having no human contact. And then when I'm around people, like when I do come out of isolation and around people, I get paranoid, like anxiety. Because I'm not used to being around people after being in a cave.
He's since received a payout from corrections after it was found to be unjustified.
I was emotional wreck. Because when times get hard and you're sitting in your cell, there's nothing you can do. It's not like you can just knock on the door and say, I'm sorry, can you let me out now? I'll do what you want me to do.
He's not the only prisoner to experience this correction practice. New figures obtained by Breakfast show more than 3,500 prisoners spent longer than 15 days in directed segregation from July in 2019 to May in 2023. Numbers peaked between July of 2021 and June of 2022. Correction says the high numbers were in part driven by COVID contingencies. The 2023 data, although incomplete, does show a trend down from that spike.
The use of segregation is often one of a number of strategies. Often it's a last strategy because of the often extreme nature of that, to again maintain safety and in many ways order within that prison complex. But I guess it sits within a nest of more complex issues as well. He mentioned staff shortage, which is a significant issue with Potam at the moment, but also have an increasing remand population as well.
6 years ago, a United Nations report slammed New Zealand's widespread and concerning use of solitary confinement in prisons. And again, in June of this year, Corrections Chief Inspector expressed a lack of confidence in the current system due to poor record keeping, inadequate levels of clinical involvement and placement, the absence of a robust framework for those segregated or at risk, and difficulty in accessing reliable data. In a statement, the Corrections Minister says segregation use has increased in recent years and points to a rise in gang members, aggression and violence in our prisons. Calvin Davis says an overall review is not needed at this stage.
people who are in our system don't tend to engender much by way of public sympathies. On the other hand, these folk will also be released sooner or later, and the question we need to ask as a society really is what shape and condition do we want them in when they come out?
People like Tupe, who is still working through what he experienced.
Trauma, like I still feel like I'm in jail sometimes.
Jessica Swan, One News.
2 weeks ago, Hurricanes forward Isaiah Walker-Leawere was banned from sport for a month after testing positive for THC, the main psychoactive compound found in cannabis. That's despite Drug-Free Sport New Zealand admitting it's not performance enhancing and that they're campaigning against its prohibited status in sport. However, as Victor Waters explains, the plant's medicinal use is gaining support within rugby.
He's a familiar face in New Zealand rugby. Now Liam Messam wants to be the face of change for player welfare, pushing for cannabidiol, or CBD, the therapeutic component of cannabis, to be embraced.
I tried it and absolutely loved it straight away. Just the inflammation in the body. I had the best sleeps that I've had. Doesn't cure the problem, it just helps me live a better life.
Its use by rugby players has risen since 2018 when it was removed as a banned substance by the World Anti-Doping Authority. But cannabis itself is still banned. And while Drug-Free Sport is fighting that, it has concerns about contamination and prescription-only CBD.
CBD, it doesn't have the psychoactive piece to it, and it's used medicinally properly to cope with pain relief, with some stress disorders. And you need to be really clear as an athlete that it doesn't have any residual THC in it. And as an athlete, how do you know that?
Instead, athletes currently turn to painkillers, ranging from anti-inflammatories to opioids. Among those, tramadol, which from next January will be banned by WADA in competition after concerns over its addictive potential.
I had a couple of friends here at the Chiefs when they were playing, because they had to take Voltarens just to be able to play. Took too many one night, and then his wife found him collapsed over the toilet seat and had a couple of ulcers in his stomach. When you're a young footy player, all you want to do is get out there on the footy field and you're doing whatever it takes.
Former Blues and Scotland player Grayson Hart knows that all too well. A knee injury forcing him to take up to 8 painkillers a day for 3 years while playing. It led him to create the first CBD product on the market certified by WADA.
There are so many players just hugely reliant on painkillers, and it's so unhealthy. I see CBD as a way to show the wider world that this kind of narrative that we've got against something like the cannabis plant isn't all that it's kind of portrayed to be.
Yeah, there's a lot of interest in the rugby circles about CBD. This is one of those things that they're too scared to take it.
But with organisations like the NBA and UFC now allowing cannabis, CBD could soon be a game changer in sport. Victor Waters.
A victory for the Dallas County Juvenile Department, which had been embroiled in a court battle with Dallas County commissioners over records the department said were confidential and protected by state law. Fox 4's Sean Rabb has the story. Sean.
Yeah, Commissioner Andrew Summerman said he had reports of children being locked in isolation for hours, and he wanted to know if that was so and why, and whether the juvenile department needed more employees or needed a larger budget, needed more funds. But a judge ruled the commissioners did not have authority and did not prove their case.
We're here because the Dallas County Commissioners Court has a very important job to do, and we need information to do it, Judge.
Dallas County Commissioner Andrew Summerman and County Judge Clay Jenkins, who are part of the 9-member Juvenile Oversight Board, subpoenaed documents from Dallas County Juvenile called observation sheets. Those detail detainees' activity every day, including time spent in what's called behind the door, or solitary confinement. Summerman said he wanted to know if reports by parents of kids and even some former employees of juveniles in isolation for hours are true, and needs to determine if juveniles should have more employees or even a larger budget. Juvenile Executive Director Darrell Beatty pushed back, his attorneys saying the documents are confidential by state law and sued to stop the commissioner's attempted access. Reading from state law in court.
The juvenile board should set policies. The juvenile board may investigate. The juvenile board may do any special studies. It never mentions the county commissioners, not once.
Judge Eric Moyer weighed the arguments from both sides.
The defendant commissioner's court has not provided authority to this court that justifies the issuance and the execution in compliance with its subpoenas. So therefore, the motion to compel is denied.
And the observation sheets Summerman sought stay secret inside the juvenile department. But if the entire juvenile board has concerns, those can be addressed.
The juvenile board, which has the authority, they can raise whatever issues are appropriate with the board. They can ask the board to do whatever investigations they deem necessary, and they continue to be able to do so in the future.
So they're able to keep the records confidential, but there's still another issue out there, and that is a criminal investigation by the state's Office of Inspector General into alleged mistreatment of juveniles in the facility, and that is still in process. Steve?
All right, Sean Rabb in studio tonight. Sean, thank you.
It was the scene Friday night when 4 teens were arrested for having 3 guns at a high school football game between Canal Winchester and Groveport, Madison. All 3 guns had Glock switches. Crime Tracker 10's Lacey Crisp explains the new charge for one of those teens. It's a story you'll only see right here on 10 TV.
One of the Franklin County prosecuting attorneys warns just how dangerous Glock switches can be, which is why his office, for the first time, is charging a juvenile with that speculation.
It's very concerning. These dangerous, destructive devices are wreaking havoc in our community. They're relatively cheap. They're easy to attach to a gun, and they are very, very dangerous.
In this body-worn camera video, you can see Madison Township Police pull not 1, not 2, but 3 fully loaded handguns with Glock switches from 4 teens at the football game Friday night.
If they have it attached to a weapon, that means that that weapon goes from a semi-automatic weapon, meaning a bullet comes out after every trigger pull, to a fully automatic weapon, meaning 1 trigger pull and the gun will continue shooting until it's empty.
Madison Township Police say the teens, an 18-year-old, 2 17-year-olds, and a 16-year-old were taken into custody. Madison Township Police say the 16-year-old was arrested January 26th this year for carrying a concealed weapon and improper handling of a firearm in a motor vehicle. That 16-year-old will now be the first juvenile in the county to ever be charged with having a Glock switch attached to a gun.
We want everyone to know, the criminals who are in possession, that if you possess one of these dangerous, destructive devices, we're going to come after you and we're going to send you to prison for having those. And so hopefully the word does get out.
If he is found delinquent with having the Glock switch on a gun, that teen could face a mandatory of 1 to 6 years in juvenile prison. In all of last year, Columbus police recovered 17 Glock switches. So far this year, they have more than doubled that at 52.
I've been a police officer over 20 years. I never heard of these until about 6 months ago. I was on a traffic stop and arrest, and an officer, we were passing around saying, "What is this?"
Brian Steele with the Fraternal Order of Police says last year, CPD recovered about 1,500 guns and have already recovered 2,000 guns this year. He's glad the prosecutor's office is sending a message with the charges on Glock switches.
We're doing our job. Our members are removing these weapons from the street. It will be a catch and release system until the prosecutor steps up. It's good to see his chief prosecutor is doing his job. Let's continue to take violent offenders, charge them, and hold them accountable.
And we also checked in with Delaware County. So far, they've not recovered any Glock switches. In Columbus, Lacey Crisp, 10 TV News.
Now, the Franklin County Prosecutor's Office has charged several adults for having those Glock switches attached to guns. Adults face a mandatory 6 years in prison if they're found.
Well, today, students in Ohio's largest school district are going back to class. More than 45,000 students at Columbus City Schools will hit the books again today.
They sure are. 10 TV's Amy Steigerwald joining us now live from the Columbus school bus compound. This one in South Columbus. And Amy, we can see those buses moving right behind you there. They're revving to go. And so somebody else, I hear.
Yeah, that's right. The buses have been very, very active over the course of the past 15 minutes, and so has new superintendent Dr. Angela Chapman. She is here kind of waving them off this morning. First day vibes. How are you feeling?
I am feeling energized. As you can see this morning, the bus compound here at Freebus is buzzing with lots of energy, lots of excitement, and we are ready to officially kick off the first day of school today.
And, you know, last year, we're thinking back to the first day of school last year. It looks a lot different this year. As a parent, what perspective are you looking forward to bringing to energize the staff and students this year?
We have been working all last semester as well as over the summer about making sure that we are setting the expectations, making sure that everyone knows that we have high expectations for our students, for our scholars, and we are making sure that we work on strengthening our relationships internally and externally in the community and in our schools and in our classrooms. This is work really that we want to make sure that we continue to prioritize throughout the year, not just on the first day of school, but certainly on the first day of school, we are working on creating warm, welcoming environments to welcome back 45,000 students across the district.
Absolutely. And, you know, we would be missing an opportunity. We're at a bus compound. Obviously, safety is top of mind for parents this morning, especially when it comes to kids on buses. What confidence do you have in these drivers getting these kids to school this morning?
I have 100% confidence in our drivers. Please know that safety is everyone's responsibility across the district. We all have a role to play in ensuring the safety of our students. Our bus drivers go through intensive 6 to 8 weeks of training before they're even onboarded to become a driver, and we continually invest in their professional development and growth and really prioritize safety throughout their journey and their experience. So it's not just one touch point, it's multiple opportunities to make sure that safety is always top of mind for them.
Dr. Angela Chapman, thank you so much for joining us this morning. And she's also a parent, so you got to send your kid off. So I'll let you go there. We're going to send things back to you guys in the studio live in Columbus. Amy Stuggerwald for 10
South
TV.
Carolina Department of Juvenile Justice whistleblower. The department is undermining the rehabilitation of a group of juveniles at the Broad River Road complex. Friday, the department indefinitely paused mental health and transitional meetings after a riot Thursday. Chief Investigative Reporter Chris Joseph sat down with that whistleblower. So, Chris, where do things stand now?
Well, Dondi, the department says the pause is for everyone's safety, but it hasn't picked a date to resume the meetings and some of those resources the whistleblower is concerned about. The whistleblower alleges this violates the department's own policy. The DJJ's Cypress Storm looks normal enough on the outside. But inside, juveniles damaged the building and were able to escape the dorm last Thursday. The next day, the Broad River Road complex's facility administrator sent out this email, making the following changes until further notice. No psychiatric clinics for the juveniles, daily education packets instead of classes, and visits to help with the juveniles' transitions back to the community must be postponed.
The youth will not have any way to express their emotions. They won't have anybody to talk to. They won't have a feeling that there's anybody that cares about them, that there's anybody that's on their side.
Do you think it undermines their rehabilitation?
Yes, they're not getting any rehabilitation.
This DJJ employee gave us the email. They say it flies against department policy, which requires a monthly face-to-face meeting with an officer to help with the transitioning out into the community. They're also concerned the department is isolating the youth as punishment.
There have been things happening for the last year and a half, and I keep saying, no, let somebody else do it. But when I saw this with the kids, this is not good for them. They do not need to be locked up like animals. To cut them off from everybody, to keep them in the rooms like they are, with no psych clinic, not getting anything they need, supposedly to reset their behavior.
It's unclear how many youth are impacted. A spokesperson for the DJJ says the pause is for safety and the visits will be rescheduled. The department has not yet responded to questions about the juveniles' daily schedules. Now, the DJJ entered an agreement with the Federal Department of Justice to curb isolation. The director in charge of the DJJ's compliance in that agreement was on that email. Dondi?
Thank you so much, Chris. And the Department of Juvenile Justice falls under the governor's office as a cabinet agency. A spokesperson for Governor Henry McMaster released a statement standing by the DJJ's decision and its leadership.